people use the word vibes in so many ways. It's very popular to talk about it. And so I just use a very simple model of mind, which has the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the superconscious mind to divide up the vibes into conscious vibes, subconscious vibes, and superconscious vibes. The conscious mind and conscious vibes are the kind that are out there for your senses to pick up, and you intentionally set it up that way. You know, the vibe of the wedding is rustic something or other, and so you put things around, or just the clothes you wear. So you smile at somebody to send out these vibes, and you pick it up. So those are conscious vibes. Subconscious vibes are the ones that so many different kinds, but basically your body's picking them up, but you don't notice it consciously. So there are chemicals that, for example, have very profound impacts on our the vibe we get about somebody.
Today on the Conscious Fertility Podcast, we have Dr. Garret Yount. He's a PhD molecular neurobiologist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, IONS, where his research focuses on laboratory-based models of exceptional human abilities. He obtained his BS from the that doesn't sound right, BS. We're going to call it Bachelor of Science, eh? He
Yeah,
obtained his BS.
that sounds better.
There's some people that, with our topic, they may say, yeah, exactly. This is a BS degree. He has he obtained his you'll see we're a little playful here today. He obtained his Bachelor of Science from the Department of Molecular and Cellular Biology at the Pennsylvania State University and his PhD from the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior at the State of New York at Stony Brook. And I'm sharing with you guys his background here because when we talk about conscious work, part of the goal of the podcast is to bring some credibility there, like showing you that there is some rigor, there's some science behind this. We're not just somebody had this thought or one person had this dream and they're telling you this is how the world could work. There's some science rigor, and people like Garret today have done the education to get to this place where they can really observe and study these things that we're going to talk about today. So a little more about Garret. He began his formal studies in consciousness research with a small grant from the Institute of Noetic Sciences way back in 1995. That allowed him to work with biofield practitioners. Garret will have to define what biofield is, and spiritual healers in the laboratory. And since then, Dr. Yount has conducted carefully controlled laboratory experiments with spiritual healers and biofield practitioners from around the world. And this includes China, Brazil, Canada, the USA, Japan, India, Russia, Hungary, and Sri Lanka. And he's also been fortunate to be amongst the first scientists to be awarded a research project grant from the National Institute of Health to study energy healing. And he's also the author of Why Vibes Matter, Understanding Your Energy and Learn How to Use It Wisely. At the beginning, I was telling Garret at the beginning that we actually met way back in 2022 when he was part of the Society of Science Exploration Conference, and I got to moderate his talk. And so welcome back, Garret, and nice to have you on the Conscious Fertility Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So as I kind of shared in the intro, looking for like credibility here. And to me, you're the credibility guy. Like you have studied, you got PhD, you're doing research, you're doing rigor. It's kind of like I'm the guy that wants to believe, but I need some evidence to help me believe. I'm not one of those guys that, okay, I'm just going to believe because you said it. I may be a little naive, but I say I have some healthy skepticism. That's why I kind of wanted to talk to you today, because I feel there's a paradigm shift from the Newtonian world. Everything's very materialistic. You can only what you see, you measure with your senses are real, to this quantum idea that there's more to this world, where there's a paradigm shift happening. So I'm so glad you're here. And I kind of wanted to start with just your book that you wrote, Why Vibes Matter, Understanding Your Energy and Learn How to Use It Wisely. I want to get into a little bit of your book. Can we first define biofield sciences or biofield healing or biofield practitioner, since it's in your book and in your bio?
Yeah. So it's biofield science. It's somewhat of a catch-all phrase to include spiritual healing, like Qigong, Jorei, Reiki. So as you alluded to, the materialistic idea of the body, of the world, and then the body being this kind of machine is not the whole story, clearly. So there are all these traditions, a lot of them healing traditions, developed to manages subtle energies of the body. So different cultures call it different things like chi or prana. So biofield science, it's kind of the modern lingo to make it more palatable to speak to a scientific community. So it's essentially these purported energies associated with the body that are very related to health and can be influenced by our mind. So that's the catch-all phrase for Biofield.
Then I need to even back it up more. How is it somebody gets interested in this field? Like, what was it for you that brought you to this? And I ask it because, many people, when they go into some type of vocational profession, there's a personal experience. Like a lot of people that end up being psychologists, psychotherapists had trauma that they wanted to work with, right? They had to heal themselves and they went out to and heal others. It's because it's not the typical thing. I want to grow up to be a lawyer, accountant, a doctor, researcher. This back in the 90s definitely wasn't on people's radars like it is today. So what's your story? How did you get interested in this?
Well, it's interesting because when we were speaking earlier a little bit about the podcast, Conscious Fertility, and you were mentioning about the consciousness aspect of it, that's where I began my interest. So when I was young, had some experiences that led me to believe that consciousness and the human mind was a lot more than what everybody was talking about, what I was learning about. So I was super interested in consciousness, powers of the mind, and then trying to do personal stuff, reading books, a lot of stuff out of Asia, trying to get out of my body, stuff like that. And then I wanted to study consciousness for my PhD. And this was even earlier than the 90s. So there was really no graduate school for this. So I went to the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior at State University of New York, thinking that, okay, well, that's got neurobiology and behavior, that mix, they're going to welcome me there. But I realized a couple weeks in that if I mentioned the word consciousness one more time, I was going to get booted. So and that's when I met my wife, who had said the caterpillar has to bend in order to move forward. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to bend. I'm going to get this PhD, do something as closely related to mind and genes as I could. This was my interest from my bachelor's of science and molecular biology. So I began just kind of searching for this mind gene connection. And that's when my father was diagnosed with cancer and was given a pretty grim prognosis. And so that's when I learned about Qigong with him. I learned to do Qigong, and it's a whole personal arc story, beautiful. But I realized that all this was kind of an in to get NIH grant. I can study consciousness by studying the mind-body healing. And so that's what kind of moved me in the direction. So I learned about Qigong personally as a health promoting practice with my father, doing it with him because it was an acute situation. But for me, I just continue to do it daily as a health promotion. And that's my research in. Did I answer the question? I don't know. I
You
kind of
did.
went all over the place there.
No, I like it. I got more questions for you. We'll talk a little bit about Qigong then. But first, you had mentioned, and if you want to share, great. If not, I understand as well. But you said you had some experiences when you were younger. And then you bought books on how to get out of your body. So how old were you? And if you're willing, can you share your experience? Remembering our audience is fairly open to this and probably have had similar experiences. So we're always looking like, is it just me or have other people had these experiences?
Sure. I was about 13 years old. The most dramatic. There were smaller instances of kind of feeling like I was having these clairvoyant experiences, but the most dramatic one that really kind of shifted my whole course of my life was when I was 13 and I was planning to sneak and have alcohol for the first time. So I had been collecting little bits of alcohol in a mason jar in my closet in my bedroom and hiding this from my parents, planning for when they were going to be away. So uh
You're making what I would call as a kid swamp juice, all different types. I
Oh my
remember.
gosh. Like,
Yeah.
remember grasshoppers, like the bottoms of the glasses from my parents', parties. I would get up in the middle of the night and collect them.
Oh
It's
gosh.
nasty. So anyway, when they discovered it, I was in another floor of the house. I was reading The Lord of the Rings in front of the fire, and there was the Middle Earth scenes, and it was if someone changed the channel in my mind, and I could see my parents discovering my swamp juice. And it was, this huge emergency for a 13-year-old kid, and so I ran down the hallway, down the stairs into my room, and they were in the exact position. It was just like I had seen through the house, and I like fell on the bed. I almost fainted. I was like so overwhelmed by this. They, of course, thought that I was upset because I had been busted, and they were like, "Calm down, it's okay. You can't drink this, but we'll get you something." And I was like, "No, no, I just saw through the house. I just saw through the house." So that was a pretty traumatic event for me, and that kind of set me into this curiosity about like how did that happen and what is going on. And it's fun to think about. I think that, obviously it was an emergency from my psyche at that time. Maybe that broke through these barriers that we built up to this ability to have these clairvoyant visions. And also, my mind, I was in a magical world of Middle Earths. I often think that that's part of what kind of loosened me up to be able to access that. Just my imaginations.
Fast forward to where we are today, have you developed a process where you're able to do that with more on will, or is it still random?
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
completely random.
Yeah. Okay. I was curious about that. It sounds like, what you're saying is that near death like experience where people that have NDEs
Mm,
often can see out other rooms outside their body. Like they can, so we know you had that experience without having a near death experience, but you had a near death like where you're able to travel through walls, etc.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, in the qigong part, have you done research on qigong since because you've done so much research? I want to be curious about some of the research you've done and qigong. Just because for me, being a practitioner of Chinese medicine was part of our training. It
Mm,
wasn't until just actually a few years ago that I got interested and started playing with qigong for my own personal
yeah.
well-being because it resonated with me. So I'm curious for you with qigong. It resonated with me because I never enjoyed meditation so much, just sitting.
Mm,
I never enjoyed it. And this qigong teacher said that what qigong is, the way she described it, it's a combination of intention, breath, and movement.
mm,
And to me, intention has benefit, the breath obviously, and movement. I think about energy because I don't understand it because I'm not an electrical engineer, but magnets and they need to move to create all this energy, I guess. So,
mm.
sitting versus meditation, but there's movement to it. It just made sense based on how somebody was explaining electrical engineering that you need a
Yeah,
little movement to make the energy move, to have energy. So, what's your understanding of Qigong? Have you done research on it?
yeah. I really like that. And I'd never thought about that it makes sense from electrical engineering. Because, movement, there's movement, electricity anytime there's a magnetic field, all this relationship. That's really cool. I always thought of it that I really like Qigong. Similarly, for meditation, I'm not that good at meditating. And for me, Qigong, it's like it basically is easier to meditate because you kind of got, the monkey mind, it just wants to be kind of throw it a bone. It's got something to do. It just makes it easier for me to meditate. That's my experience of it. I have done quite a bit of research on it. I was originally curious about it because, when I learned Qigong with my father, we had gone to China and we were in Beijing and learning from practitioners there and had some interaction with scientists that had published papers. So learning the personal practice, that was the main thing. But in addition, I had some labs that had published papers showing that external Qigong, so not the personal meditation, but masters who had built up enough Qi and practice to be able to emit it to treat others. And there had been gone into Chinese labs and shown that cell cultures are responding. And cell cultures was kind of my thing. I came out of the part of my background that wasn't covered in the bio was I worked at the Brain Tumor Research Center at University of California, San Francisco. So I grew brain cells, that's part of it's everything, my everyday. So I was really fascinated by this demonstration, apparently in these labs, because I'm sure your audience is aware of the great power of psychoneuroimmunology and the ability of our mind to influence our health. And so I was curious, like there's very, very limited funds for research back then and still now in this. And That's what I argued to get this NIH grant was if it is, if these cell culture experiments work, then it argues for more of like a radiation, type model versus basically a hypnotic induction of self-healing. So I believe that power of self-healing is, stupendous and as miraculous and wonderful as imagining these worlds of subtle energies. And particularly going through this with my father, who, by the way, was a hypnotist. I was these Qigong masters, they're super charismatic. And, it seemed to me it's possible that the whole ritual of this was basically allowing, giving permission or mesmerizing people into unlocking their own healing abilities. Kind of like my imagination that this Lord of the Rings, imaginations unlocked my mind's ability to have the clairvoyant experience. So I was really interested to just, hey, I want to repeat these experiments and see if we can show in vitro, then it kind of, there's two different branches you can go down in the research. So how I got started in it.
So
And
I got to unpack something there. When
sure.
you said you're working with the petri dishes, the cells in the petri dishes, what were you measuring to see change? Because to me, this is significant because I would think that cells in a petri dish don't get impacted by placebo effect.
Yeah, that's pretty much the basic idea of why doing it in the Petri dish. So the advantage of it is there's no placebo effect, at least the way that we think about it. The disadvantage, of course, is it's disconnected from the whole body's electrical system, and you can argue that this is, what relevance does it have? Particularly if it doesn't work, what relevance does it have to a whole body? If it does work, it has it's pretty clear the relevance. Okay, well, there's something going through space that's hitting it and having an effect, apparently. So there were so many. I wanted a slight diversion, but this is one of my favorite stories from over there in Beijing. You asked what I was having them do. So here's a petri dish. I got normal brain cells growing, and these are primary cells that came from a person's brain. And they're very, very difficult to have them grow in on a plastic dish. So I asked the Qigong masters to come in to the lab and try to emit Qi to help the cells grow, to promote their cell growth, basically looking at cell division, mitosis of these normal human cells. And this was the surprising, one of the most surprising things that happened over there. The first time we did it, I was sitting there observing, but he did all the motions, like again, very mesmerizing. He walked out and he's like, nope, those cells needed to go. I sent killing chi, they had to go, and I didn't. And I was like, what? This is all falling apart. It took so much work to, get this all set up, Beijing. And then I calmed down and I realized that, as I said, it's really hard to get cells to grow in on plastic. So 3 days before, I do a lot to that plastic to get it ready, put a bunch of stuff on it. One of the things I put on it are lethally irradiated brain tumor cells. So tumor cells grow great on plastic because they're cancerous and they got all their signals messed up. And so, as I said, the Brain Tumor Research Center, for years, I just had these cells in the freezer. It's basically a reagent. It's a tube I take out where I had grown a bunch of cancer cells, hit them with X-rays to the point that there's so much damage to their DNA that they initiate what's called programmed cell death. It's basically this like a 2 or 3 day process where they systematically disassemble all their RNA and protein. It's something that's natural in our bodies and all of our cells that's still intact in these cancer cells. So what I do is I smear them on the bottom of the plastic and along with a bunch of other stuff. And then they just slowly kind of melt into the plastic and create this organic matrix. Then on the day of the experiment, when I put in the normal cells, which are very finicky, they're much happier because now they're organic material. But I've been doing this for 5 years, didn't even think about the fact that those cancer cells that were undergoing programmed cell death, again, that means they know they're on their way to dying.
What's the
And
apoptosis?
it is apoptosis, exactly. But there's 10 million of them, and there's 100 normal cells. So I realized, oh my gosh, if this guy can really see the energy of cells, just like he said, and he's going to go in there and assess it, of course he's going to see these predominant cells in there that literally have to go, which is exactly what he said. So I mean, again, I had a vasovagal response. I was like, this is proof that they can see chi, and like, I can't believe it. So, I mean, so it's like, okay, well, that's a whole nother line of research. And I said, okay, let's just do it over again. This time, ignore the dying cells. There are, and we kind of started that whole thing over. So there's a bunch of stories that come from that, but that's a long way of saying one of the things I asked them to do was to help normal cells grow better in one of the sets of experiments.
And were they able to?
They were. In that experiment, they were able to induce greater growth in the normal brain cells compared to untreated cells. I will say that I came back and tried to replicate that experiment, and I was not able to have it replicated in my own lab. So I published the data together in one paper saying it worked this time, it didn't work this time. So it's inconclusive from this set of results.
Do you have a sense, like, what do you, how would you do it differently, or how you figured out there was the cell death, the cancer cells, so they were seeing that before you couldn't?
Yeah.
Is there something between the two labs, between not just physically, but is there something that you realize could be the issue why it didn't work in your lab?
Well, I wouldn't call it a realization, it's a hunch.
In Kant?
Um, and it has to do with the minds of everybody involved. So my mind approaching it the first time was a very open, wondering mind. I was like, what does it, can the universe show us? You know, I was just kind of a kid, just like
Mhm.
happy and curious. And then for sure, when I was doing it again, I was like, okay, now I know exactly what I want. This I wanted to repeat. We're going to nail this down. You know, we're going to lock it in. So there was like an open feeling and versus a almost controlling, intention, which
Attached to form an outcome versus curious and open.
absolutely, absolutely. So
Resist, no resistance, resistance.
yeah, it feels like that. I mean, so there's no doubt that was different. Whether or not that could impact it. I mean, I'm not the only one that this has happened to, and it's happened to me over and over again. And when we have conferences on biofield science, it's a major topic, the reproducibility paradox. We start talking about the trickster, the archetype of the trickster, and maybe the universe is kind of guiding this process in a way that peeking it around the corner for us because we need to understand it a little bit better. I don't know. It's very interesting and fun and also problematic because reproducibility is kind of one of the most fundamental aspects of the scientific method. So it's a real challenge. It remains a real challenge.
I want to kind of unpack this, why we can't do the reproducible, right? Like, as you said, it's so important with the scientific model. And again, hunches and what's going on. You mentioned the trickster. Before that, though, just to kind of bring it into our group here, I want to get more into this self-healing. Like, the body has this capacity to self-heal. Chinese medicine that I practice understands that. I'm also, like your dad, a clinical hypnotherapist. So
Mm.
using the mind to engage the body's healing. In the
Yeah.
West, we often call, we give it a negative connotation, placebo. And we know placebo exists 30% more in things. And you talk about rituals, like when a doctor puts on their, they wash their hands and somebody puts on their gloves and they go through the door and the mask and the light. I mean, that's a ritual as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we see research where they do knee surgery, orthoscopic, but they pretend, they go in and they show the video of a knee surgery happening. So everybody's spending the same amount of time with the patient on the table.
Yeah.
One is getting real surgery. The other one, they just, they put the probe in, open a hole, but they do no surgery, and it's all done. And
Yeah.
the person that's having the fake surgery has as good or better results than the real surgery.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I always viewed it as Chinese medicine view is, we are looking to do whatever we can to get the self-healing capacity involved. We want the
Mm.
body involved because it has this incredible way of healing. Like, it's constantly replacing cells and killing cancer, and fighting bacteria all the time, even when you don't
Yeah.
have symptoms.
Yeah.
So placebo is not something we don't want. We want to engage you in the healing. When it comes to research, I get it, because we want to know, does this substance make a difference? Like, we want to know, we want to know if this is adding to it. So can you talk a bit about what you've observed with the body's self-healing ability from the biofield perspective, and also maybe talk a little bit more about placebo as a scientist, because so
Mm.
many people dismiss it and say it's a bad thing, where I'm saying we want to engage the self-healing capacity, belief.
Yeah. Well, let me start with that, my perspective as a just add. So I agree, and I think it's fantastic that you're getting that message out. And from a molecular biologist, I want to say one of the coolest experiments on placebo that I think is one that shows that placebo can actually regulate gene expression. So this is a while ago. It's so long I can't remember the name, and maybe 20 years ago. But it was our body, so opioids, the famous drugs, right? The famous painkillers. We have endogenous opioids. Our brain produces these. That's why the drugs that you take work. They hit the same receptors. So they did a placebo experiment where they're injecting, I guess, salt water into men's jaws, which is just painful. Doesn't cause any damage, but it hurts. And they did it when they were giving them either exogenous opioids or not. The design, don't remember fully. But the punchline is that people that were getting a painful injection of salt water into their jaw were then experiencing pain relief with a placebo, but they looked in the brain and they could measure that these endogenous opioids were being synthesized and released. So the placebo effect, wherever that is, that black box of the power of your mind, just that belief was able to turn a gene on and turn up its expression in your body.
So I got to unpack that. So they were giving an injection to cause pain.
Hmm.
They were giving anti-pain pills,
To some and to some not.
and the ones that were getting the fake
Hmm.
placebo pills, their brain behaved as if they got the real pill.
Hmm.
That reminds me, here locally in UBC, they did a Parkinson's study where they were doing some, maybe they're giving them dopamine. I don't know if they do it through injection to help with their tremors. And so, because they're talking about the behavior of training the body, right, to respond. So, no surprise, they take the medicine. Hopefully, I'm remembering the study well. And, their tremors improved and mood improved. But then they switched out the drug and started giving them saline, and they had the same results.
Hmm.
Not surprisingly, from the placebo effect, but then when they did the brain stuff, it was if they were getting dopamine, but they weren't. So same
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's impactful because in modern medicine, at this stage, there's a lot of credibility in at your DNA, right? It's like, okay, this is the DNA gene level. It's really takes it out of the realm of woo-woo. If you think it, because a lot of people, oh, it's just in your head, just imagining it and all that, like as if it doesn't have any power or impact. But these examples show that it impacts our bodies at the most fundamental level that really has all the credibility in medicine right now.
So
That's
it's a
really.
little difficult to explain how come this works.
Mm.
However, that it works is not as debatable as in when the people that do visualization of like Pac-Man eating cancer cells, or they're doing things, you can measure a physical response in the body, even though there is nothing of physical matter that they are taking or getting injected in. So
Hmm.
why this works may be very debatable, but the fact that you can see the body's healing response and outcomes change, is that something you're fairly confident that we're measuring that and we can see that? We know it works, but we don't always know how or why it works.
Yeah, and I think it's good to compare those kind of situations. So the visualization of Pac-Man and seeing the impact on kind of the overall physiology, that's clearly demonstrated. But it leaves open a lot for interpretation about why. So there's so many aspects of our behavior that could impact kind of some health condition, even and especially subconsciously, right? This visualization could trigger 25 different behavior changes and also attitude changes in that person over the period of time, from really mundane things like small choices about diet to kind of level of chronic anxiety, which affects the autonomic balance, and the autonomic balance influences inflammation. So there's a wide range of things that could explain that it happens. Except that, but if you do these really simple experiments and you show that like this pain injection, it's all happening right there in this little time zone. And you see a gene turn on at this very fundamental level. You say, okay, well, I can influence the level, I can influence the gene activity. That's kind of a very basic mechanistic explanation for how you can have these health benefits. Now, as you point out, there's still upstream of that a little bit like, how does that connect? Like what, molecule goes in to turn on that gene? There is still a black box there, as you say. But yeah, the science is in that the power of self-healing is within our intention, it's something that we can influence intentionally. The limit of what it can do is unknown, but now that we know that it can influence gene expression, it's kind of like way beyond the limit that we would even need to think that we could influence pretty much any health condition.
My hunch is it's just the perspective that we have. And sometimes when you change the perspective that you look at something, you can see it differently. I think in modern medicine and modern science, Newtonian science, we think the physical is the real and the source. I get a hunch talking to people like yourself and the guest I've had on the Conscious Fertility podcast that there's another blueprint or dimension that is the more the source. And when, although we're not measuring it, noticing it, when we make a change on that level, the cascade flows down into the physical. So we keep looking at the physical as if this is where it's all starting. But to me, it's kind of where it's ending. And maybe it's bi-directional. It probably
Yeah,
is bi-directional. But I
yeah.
think, there's things that we're doing that look invisible to ourselves that are
Mhm.
happening on another level. And I want to talk about your PTSD study that I got to moderate that you when you presented at
Yeah.
the SSE on, I think it was called Decrease on Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Symptoms Following Lucid Dreaming Healing Workshop. I have to give a little bit of preliminary why I want you to talk about it. There's a thing called fertility trauma. So they have shared that the stress of going through infertility and infertility treatments is comparable to a terminal illness diagnosis.
Mm, mm,
And there's one group that I've been talking with that has been measuring heart rate variability, something on the brain, on the palm. So they're measuring all these autonomic nervous system. And they have compared some of the stress that women go through when they go through fertility and IVF to the stress that they put Navy SEALs through training, what they're seeing in the body. Okay. So now that I've said that, for those that are listening that are on the journey, they're like, oh my God, that's what's happening. And to the men, if you are listening, yes, this is, the fact that your partner can get up and smile today just to show you the stress, they're measuring this. So this isn't like an opinion. I mean, this has been studied and measured. So they have fertility stress, fertility burnout, fertility trauma. Now
mm.
I'd love for you to talk about PTSD, what that is, what is lucid dreaming, and then what did you learn in your research about this?
Okay. Okay. So PTSD is a condition that's, can be triggered by any type of trauma. It leaves a residual disorder where the years after it's kind of this really debilitating symptoms of, nightmares and being triggered by things and anxiety. It's a very difficult condition and it's very difficult to treat. I learned so lucid dreaming is a special type of dreaming where you wake up inside your dream. So you know that your body is in bed asleep. This has been talked about in all kinds of cultures in the past. Dreams of knowledge from the Yaqui Indian tradition. I learned about this from the Carlos Castaneda books.
I like those books.
That's where I learned how to do lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming was in modern science, began to be studied about 100 years ago. So I've always wanted to do research in dreaming, and I saw and I had been doing research on gene expression with folks with PTSD previously. And then I found this lucid dreaming teacher named Charlie Morley out of London who was doing these workshops for veterans with PTSD and helping them transform their trauma and reduce their symptoms through this lucid dreaming workshop. And he got a Winston Churchill Fellowship. It's very credible, really amazing anecdotal stories about relief from PTSD symptoms. So I contacted him and said, "Hey, do you want to do some science on this? Move it out of the anecdotal mode into kind of the more scientific approach, and maybe that this could benefit more people. So that's where it started. We did a pilot study with 50 people, PTSD, and we brought them. This was an online workshop. It was very intensive. It was a week long. It was about 22 hours total of online training. But then, homework and nighttime practices. I can talk as much about that as you like, learning how to do induction techniques. Anybody can learn induction techniques. Some people just have lucid dreams spontaneously. About 1 in 5 people just have them spontaneously at least once in their life. But you can do techniques to learn them, the way I did from the Carlos Castaneda book. But basically, at the end of this week, we were measuring PTSD symptoms using a clinical tool, a self-report questionnaire called the PCL5. And everybody came in to the study above the threshold of PTSD, and everybody went out below, and we checked 3 months later, and they were still down. That's what I reported at the Society for Scientific Exploration that you spoke about. From that work, we got a grant to repeat it with a larger study, and have a placebo group, and which meant we took 100 people in. Again, these were both veterans and people that had PTSD from other types of trauma in their life, domestic violence, for example. So we repeated the study. Half of the people were randomized to a waitlist control. So they knew they were in the study and they got the same questionnaires every day, but they had to wait until the other group went through their workshop and were assessed, and then 3 months later. So this whole time, the waitlist group, every morning they got the same questionnaires that the active group had, like, did you have a lucid dream last night? And basically they went through all the probing and prodding so that we could tell whether the great result we got from the pilot study could have been from, like you say, the ritual. They were part of a study. They're in this group together. So that was why we did this replication, and it did reproduce, where the people in the workshop had this great reduction in PTSD. And this time we could compare it to another group that was being studied but didn't have the workshop, and it was statistically significant. So that randomized controlled trial is, I'm sure you've spoken about with this group before, is kind of this gold standard. So we pushed it through that, and it came out positive. So we just published that. So it's a wonderful thing. The level of impact is similar to other therapies when they work. Now, again, everybody coming into this, the other therapies had not worked. So, for example, group therapy. But I think, for sure, group therapy was part of this workshop because they're all together. We had a psychotherapist present during all of it. They learned about meditation. They learned a lot. And I think probably the most important thing is they learned that our subconscious mind is there to protect us, and that basically they're dreaming. They learned that nightmares are something that you don't want to wake up from. It's your subconscious giving the opportunity to work through trauma. So, Charlie Morley encouraged them to, embrace the monsters, and amazing stories of transformation. It was very emotional for me going through this, witnessing it all. But it's the level of type of relief you see with other therapies when they work. But some people, it may be better for them because there's some stigma sometimes around PTSD, and people don't want to go in to a hospital or to a clinic, or they don't want to admit to anybody. And so this is something you can do privately, and it's free.
This is where I want to ask more questions about your experience and what those do to help heal. Like you say, there's a nightmare, you don't want to wake up. And when you said lucid dreaming, you wake up in your dream. Just to clarify, you're not waking up, like as in your dream's over. You're dreaming, but you're aware you're dreaming.
Yeah, you're still in the dreamscape,
And
but
you can influence it basically because you're awake in it.
yeah. So normal dream, you're kind of being carried along with the story. In the lucid dream, you wake up. You can influence it. There's different levels of lucid dreaming, but you're lucid as long as you know you're dreaming. And yeah, your body's still asleep. It's a sleep state. There's a difference in the brain during normal rapid eye movement sleep, which is where most narrative-based dreams occur. Normally, your prefrontal cortex is pretty much offline. And this is part of what the prefrontal cortex is famous for, is your sense of self. So they've shown now in a lucid, when you become lucid, the prefrontal cortex comes back online, which makes sense because yourself is now, your body's in bed, but your kind of reflective awareness, the one that we're using right now to talk, that's inside the dreamscape. Not all lucid dreams you have total control. And Charlie Morley was very careful to talk about. I mean, his training is through the Tibetan Buddhism tradition. He doesn't really like to talk about control because really this is your entire subconscious mind. It's about influencing and interacting and engaging with it in a way where you do have your intention. Your intention is there.
It's episode 9. We had Robert Wagner on. It's called Lucid Dreaming to Manifest Your Reality. You're familiar with him then?
I love what, yeah, he's
Yeah,
great.
Robert. So he's episode 9 by the way, everybody, if you wanted to learn more about lucid dreaming. So when they have a nightmare, because I think about when I work with people awake, we go into their uncomfortable feelings and beliefs with my kind of hypnosis type sessions, because the whole idea is to metabolize them, not that if you what you resist persists, and
Yes.
pick up a relationship with it. So, and I think the lucid dreaming would be even more powerful if you have a nightmare or a scary animal or whatever. Can you share a little bit of, because do people share what some of the lucid dreams are? And can you share kind of some of the ways people are healing inside their dream? Because you said it's an opportunity to heal. The subconscious is trying to keep you safe. And so rather than ignore these dreams, they're an opportunity to heal it.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you my own experience having come from the workshop. So I was in a very funny dream. It's things have, kind of one of the techniques for inducing lucid dreaming is reality testing during the day, and then hopefully that habit carries over in the night. And when you see something strange, you wonder, like, am I dreaming? So I did this reality test, and it came back positive. Yeah, I'm dreaming. And like the unevolved human that I am, I started flying around because it's really fun to fly. But in my defense, the test was like, can I fly, to see if I was dreaming or not. And so then I could fly. So I was okay, I'm dreaming. But immediately this ghoul started chasing me, kind of like the Death Eater out of Harry Potter. Is like, and it was tracking me, and I could speed up, and it was just. But I remembered the teaching that you don't run, you don't run away. This is an opportunity. So I stopped midair and I hovered, and I turned to the ghoul and I said, "What can you teach me?" And it transformed into like a little me, like a young me, but with a cane, like an old man's cane. So I thought, oh, okay, this is, time is an illusion. And as soon as I said that in my mind, then all the sound stopped. And the little me took the cane and swept it across this table that had all these glass vases. And as they shattered, but there's no sound. And they all went into these little, the shards went up and became these points of energy in a matrix all around. And I knew that he was showing me this fabric of reality, the basis that reality was being built upon, and it was so overwhelming. And I started vibrating in the dream so violently, and I vibrated myself awake. I felt like I was vibrating in the bed. I think that was a dream of knowledge, and I think that it was too much, and it still is too much for my mind to comprehend. And so this is not necessarily answering your question about dreaming, but kind of a transformative thing. And I feel like that's, something I can work on. I try to, during meditation, go back and just kind of, like you stretch a muscle like a ballerina. The more you stretch, the more you'll be able to like encompass it. So that type of scene is very similar to what folks in the workshop were talking about. Just any kinds of visions and asking us for healings. One really cool point about the lucid dreaming healing that Charlie Morley talked about is that your subconscious is there to protect you, and it won't let you do anything you're not ready for. So, for example, some people would have very specific plans. You would have dream plans, and some of the plans were like, I want to confront my assailant or something like that. And a dream character would come by, as one example, with a waiter with a tray and a little card says, "You're not ready yet." So it's kind of like guiding. And Charlie argues that it's even safer than talk therapy because you're your own guardian there. So that's a flavor of it.
I want to share a bit about that and just observe. Even when you're talking, things get trapped in our cells. And when you spoke, you got emotional, right? Like, so it's real time for you. And so to me, that shows you what kind of impact it has on the cells, right? And you're still probably learning and healing from that. So thank you for sharing. When I moderated your talk, I think what you shared with us was in the dream, you're checking to wake if you want to know if you wake up or not. I think you did the test you did was see if you
Yeah.
stretch your finger, right? Remember?
It might have been stretch. Yeah, stretch or poke it through your hand.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
you can stretch your finger, and so there's that. I remember I think it was Robert said I only did it for about a week and then I stopped doing it. And talking to you now, I want to get back into lucid dreaming. I'll look for some of these courses. But I can't quote it perfectly, but it's in the I said episode 9 with Robert Wagner. It's in there how he says to get into it. I think for him it was like look for something that doesn't really belong, right? Like
Mm.
something weird.
I want to say really quickly, Robert Wagner, the IONS website has course at least one course with Robert Wagner that you can
Excellent.
sign up for. So that example, that looking for something that doesn't belong, it sounds like that was a nighttime intention, right? That's kind of like a hypnotic suggestion you gave to yourself of going to sleep, right? And
Yeah.
then it could also be used for these daytime reality testings, which is what I talked about with the stretching the finger, is that so you could use that, check, look for something that doesn't belong during the daytime. Just do it 10 times during the day. Just look around. Is there anything in this room that doesn't belong? And then, because we're creatures of habit, if you're lucky, that habit carries over into your dream and you do it out of habit rather than in response to this,
Right.
hypnotic suggestion. Either way could do that.
Your book, The Vibes, can
Yeah.
so first of all, I want ions. You mentioned ions. We're going to put that in the show notes. They got lots of material. They got great everything. Everybody. They're kind of one of the earlier pioneers on this kind of discussion that we're having, doing research. So check out their website. Why vibes matter. Understanding your energy and learn how to use it wisely is by our good doctor here, Garret. Can you tell me what are these three kinds of vibes and a little description about them? You talk about
Sure.
in the
Yeah.
book.
I in the book to make it digestible, because vibes, people use the word vibes in so many ways. It's very popular to talk about it. And so I just use a very simple model of a mind, which has the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the superconscious mind to divide up the vibes into conscious vibes, subconscious vibes, and superconscious vibes. So the conscious mind and conscious vibes are the kind that are out there for your senses to pick up, and you intentionally set it up that way. The vibe of the wedding is rustic something or other, and so you put things around, or just the clothes you wear, you smile at somebody to send out these vibes, and you pick it up. So those are conscious vibes. Subconscious vibes are the ones that so many different kinds, but basically your body's picking them up, but you don't notice it consciously. So there are chemicals that, for example, have very profound impacts on the vibe we get about somebody. Not smells. There are chemicals that we cannot smell that impact, for example, libido. And again, at the level of molecular changes. So measuring testosterone can be changed by a chemical that's emitted from women's tears. Can't smell it, but we have receptors that pick it up in our body. We don't know it, but we get this vibe about them that changes. So that's a subconscious vibe. And then the superconscious vibe is where we talk about the superconscious mind, which is where the division between the illusion of us being separate, again, not this material world, but these other realms where it's kind of the God realm or the all is one, where we're all united. And that's where I believe that these biofield therapies, when they work, kind of the radiation model, by connecting our energies through the superconscious mind. And so that's kind of the framework to talk about it all.
I'm going to tie in psychedelics with this. Why I want to talk to you about it is I kind of resonate with the idea that it's like, hey, call the universe. The universe is answered. Now hang up.
Mm-hmm.
You got your message. Now do your work because you realize what you're experiencing, what you think you know is not complete. And there's more to this world. And now learn Qigong, lucid,
Mm-hmm.
learn how to tap into it naturally. There is residue. I've had Jill Bolt Taylor on my thing. She does say what it does to the brain, and some people are at risk of becoming schizophrenic after. Like, there's a you're close, and it's what's going to do it. I see people that have used it and it's changed their lives, like people that are raging alcoholics. that have
Mhm.
done it 3 or 4 times and they've given up alcohol.
Mhm.
So you're the researcher, though, not me. I had my own personal experience where it scared the hell out of me. And I've had really awesome experiences non medicated. Like I've had those without any medication. So that was my preamble to, because maybe you're the first person that loves psychedelics. Everybody that I've had on, I don't know where they're going to come from, but interesting enough, they all say it's a 1 to 3 time experience,
Mhm.
help you see some of your shadow, help you see what's out there that you're not aware of, and now go and do the work naturally. Tap into your higher self naturally. Don't use the medication as a crutch or the residue it can leave in the body. But there are people that are loving it. You may be one of those people, and I'm open to both sides.
That's, gosh, a lot in that. Uh, well, I do talk about it in the book, and I basically agree with your sense of it. I want to tie it into Qigong too. It reminds me of something. I do think it can be something that well, opens your mind, right? And as you mentioned, it could show your shadow. I think that another thing that it can do more generally and kind of more universally is demonstrate at a knowing level the interconnectedness of everything. That the illusion of separation is obliterated, I think, by at least every type of psychedelic that I've tried, and almost everybody I've spoken to. That's one of the universal experiences.
And that's one of the things I've heard by many as well is we're all connected, right?
Yeah.
It's
And that's, by the way, the driving premise of the Institute of Noetic Sciences drives all of the science. So back to your point, I do think it's a very useful tool to kind of break that illusion and then realize, okay, the truth under that, and that so that means it's there to access naturally. So I couldn't agree with you more. And the tie-in I wanted to make with Qigong is that's also the way I feel about Qigong masters. If you're going to, everybody's like, what's a good Qigong master? How can I know one's good? And it's so difficult because there's no certification program, and not just Qigong, but, and there's so many different traditions. I think the most important thing is if someone's coming to heal you, if they're going to I think that's similarly, it's something to turbo boost you, to give you this sense of what your energy feels like, and to give you techniques to learn to do it yourself then, just part of your daily life. So I just think that's very similar to psychedelics. Psychedelics showing you're connected to everything. And I think Qigong kind of intervention is to show you that you have access to the energy of your body and that you can influence it. And so in both cases, it's a matter of, okay, that now you got a taste of that. You know what to then nurture and cultivate in your own way.
And when I work with people, they'll, because some of them know my story, they think I'm going to judge them if they do psychedelics, and I don't. What I share, kind of what you just reiterated as well, is if you're going to use it as a crutch, as a cheat, I think it's dangerous. I don't know if it works that way, right?
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think you do both, right? You're cultivating your process and you're using this as a catalyst to
Yeah.
accelerate and support it.
Yeah.
But you can't, just like there's no pill, right, to fix things, right? You still have to do your work. They're just catalysts. They're there to support, right?
Yeah.
And then the body heals. Like when you get a splinter or a cast, it doesn't do the healing. It creates an environment so the bone can set and heal, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's it. Like anything, it can be abused. So I'm not against them. For me, I wouldn't do it again. Like I can't believe my nervous system survived that. Like how dysregulated I was for close to a year after, and
Wow.
how much energy and work I had to do it myself and bring in colleagues. By the way, I called Bill up, but he was still alive back then. And I said, Bill, I broke my body. He goes, what? I go, whatever you do with your Bankston healing, if you can help me here, because I am really damaged. I mean, I'm a helper. I knew that, I mean, I was struggling. I was not well, like the nervous system. But
Yeah.
there's a part of me that was like, holy shit, I dysregulated my nervous system. I am broken. And I
Yeah.
had to do everything to regulate it again, right? Acupuncture, my herbal, and my practice. And I mean, as I say, would I do it again? No. Do I love where I'm at today? Absolutely yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
In closing, then, do you have a practice? Are you practicing lucid dreaming? What are you doing to tap into the subconscious and the superconscious? What do you do for what's your playful way of kind of tapping into this quantum entanglement or this field. I'm
Yeah,
just curious.
the only thing consistent,
Yeah.
I do a lot of playing, trying this and that, but the consistent thing I do is I still do the Qigong, the personal meditation Qigong. My favorite meditation is called dumping buckets. I describe it in the book. It's just super simple. Part of the way I'm able to continue to do that every day is, it could take as short as a minute, right? And you can extend it, but just a minute of Qigong is what I do.
Yeah. Mine, I do 5 minutes. My
Hmm.
Qigong, 5 minutes. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's not like this long thing. It's just 5 minutes. Yeah.
yeah.
Dumping buckets. What's the intention behind it? When you say dumping buckets, is your meditation? Is that a qigong or is that your meditation?
That's a
Okay.
Qigong. It's just Qigong style, and it just kind of the visualization. Again, it's just like to imagine the energy flowing, and it's got the movement in the body and
Okay.
so that. I'll share with you what this isn't the book, but I'll give it as I can say really quickly now. You don't need to get the book. Is a self-test to test that you're moving the qi in your body. And this I learned with my dad in Beijing. So it's a hot hand test. So there's different ways to do it, but first you just put your hands together so that the tips of your fingers are completely aligned. And then have a buddy mark the thumb pads right here, or you can put a pen in your mouth to do it. So that after you do it, you can put your hands back in the same way. All right, so this is just showing your hands are lined up. Then you just sit and you do your meditation, like dumping buckets or whatever meditation like that, basically show that you're quieting your mind and you're basically accessing your energy, your chi. So then and again, just a minute or 5 minutes. And so then you do the test, the hot hand test. You just imagine, and we won't do it now, but you just imagine that one of your hands is heating up however you like. It's burning up, it's on fire, you're dipping it in boiling water or lava, feeling it turn red. And literally 30 seconds, a minute. And then you line your hands back up with the line, and you look and you see that that hand is expanded, it's taller, which is on one level totally mundane. You're basically influencing the microcirculation of your hand. So more blood is going there and it makes it swell. But the Chinese principle is yi dao qi dao. So where the mind goes, the qi goes. And so I mean, to me, it gives me, and I think it gives other people the sense, oh, my mind can really influence the energy in my body. If I can make blood flow into my hand, that means I can access the energy of my body. Now, from a medical point of view, microcirculation, lack of microcirculation is one of the foundations of almost every disease. So if you can improve microcirculation, that means you can influence all those diseases. So it's a fun, simple test to see just for yourself. Don't compare yourself to anybody else, just to yourself. Like, okay, have I got my monkey mind under control today? Let me just test it. You're like, okay, yes, I'm centered. I can do things now. So anyway, it's a fun self-test.
Oh, and you talk about circulation, fertility too, by the way, blood flow. We want that.
Yeah.
My Qigong Supang Lee, I think is her name. I'm having my brain melt here to remember it, Supang, or Suping. But I think her experiment that we did where we took alcohol and
Yeah.
then we did Qigong around the alcohol, and you could taste that the difference. Like one became almost like water. Like it was incredible. Like I was like, this is unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah. Everybody was able to do that. All right. You have given me so much of your time, Garret. Thank you for the generosity. I want people to know how to connect with you. So the book is Why Vibes Matter, Understanding Your Energy and Learn How to Use It Wisely. Also, IONS, Institute of Noetic Sciences. Check out their website for courses. Where can we find you? Do you have a website, Instagram, Facebook? What can we share in the social media that you would like us to direct people to find your book or to find more about you?
I am only on the IONS website. I'm not on social media. The only thing is we've just launched a course that's based on the book. So it's kind
Okay.
of an online course you can go through. I go through the book. I give some stuff that's not in the book, and it's gonna, it's a fun
All
course.
right. So we're going to put the Noetic Science website in our show notes. You can find Garret in there as well. Check out his book, and he has an online course. that's connected to the book as well. So you can find more of that. Garret, thanks so much for taking the time today. And thanks for sharing these stories and for doing all the research that you're doing. As I shared at the beginning, there's a part of me that wants to believe, and I'm also looking for a little scientific rigor so it's easier to believe.
Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it.